Hi, Crystal.
Hey, Lenny.
I am so happy to be here with you today to talk about the Neo. Before you spoke to me about the Neo, I didn't even know what it was. So I'm curious if you could tell us all a little bit more about it.
Yeah. I love the Neo, and I'm someone who you have a test, personality test, I'm going to take it. And what I love about the Neo is that it's the gold standard in personality tests, assessments, and it's evidence-based. And what that means is that it's researched and over a long period of time, and they base it on like a large number of people. So you have your average. And then what really helps with the Neo is when you take the exam, it shows you where you stand within a population.
Mhm.
And where it really resonated with me is where I'm the outliers. When you think of statistics, you think of, okay, if 95 percentage of the population is here and I'm here, I'm at the other end of it. Oh, that's why I'm the way that I am. And it helps you to really understand, like, I'm not weird, I'm not strange, there's nothing wrong with me. This is just how I tick. And maybe ticking differently than most people can actually work to my advantage. And it just really helps to understand yourself, to have those moments of, oh, okay, this makes sense now. And I just love the freedom it gives you and the information. So it's like, oh, I'm really good at this. And I'm going to really pounce on what I'm really good at.
Yeah, and having done the Neo with you and you walking me through it, I certainly had those moments where several moments where I thought, "Oh, that explains so much," when thinking about myself. And I understand that the Neo is a tool that you're using across many of your offerings. In what applications can having this evidence-based personality assessment be useful and to who?
Well, it can, as an individual, it can be so useful for me. Like, what kind of relationships will I tend to gravitate towards personally, professionally, and what types of careers? Am I someone that I need stability? And so staying in one career for 30, 40 years is going to really suit me. Or as soon as I get bored at this job and learned everything there is to learn, I'm out of there, and understanding that about yourself so that when you go to find that particular job or path or career, whatever path that you're on, you really have that information about yourself so that you know what you're going to really excel at. And then if you take it in the context of family, so over 20 years I've worked with teens and families and children too. um Not everybody's like us. We were talking, I think, a little bit before. Lenny is like someone who can go with the flow, doesn't get easily rattled, can manage stress pretty easily. When there was someone that gets stressed out to the point where they get overwhelmed and they cry and they panic and they can't manage it, there's going to be like, what is wrong with you? Like, I'm not understanding this. But when we, as a family unit, understand, like, okay, so Susie's gonna freak out over things that I consider to be small. She's gonna have a panic attack and wail and cry and throw a temper tantrum, but that's because it's hard for her to regulate that emotion. Maybe I'm someone that I get really angry and then it's over. My family members will understand that about me because they're different. If they understand that that's my tendency, we tend to, I think, have more patience with each other and more understanding. And so there's less conflict. Or someone who likes things really organized. There's a couple that I worked with where she likes things orderly and organized and meticulous. Her husband, oh my gosh, he walks into a room, it's like a tornado was set off. And they fight about it because he doesn't understand, why are you getting so angry? And she doesn't understand why he's so chaotic. And so it really helps to understand this is just, when things aren't orderly, it makes me anxious. So when we understand each other better, there's just more, I think, compassion and empathy and less conflict, because not everybody's like us. And we don't understand that not everybody is like us.
So, what I'm hearing is that if you are working with an individual, using the NEO with an individual, it could help them, it will help them better understand themselves and therefore empower them to make decisions that are in more alignment with themselves professionally, personally, romantically, all
Mhm.
the ways.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're using the Neo in a family setting, it allows every family member to better understand each other and therefore create more harmony and more union. Is that
Absolutely.
how you envision it as
All
well?
of those things. Yeah, for sure. And if you're someone who's on the outlier, like we talked about this earlier, I am someone who's on the outlier in the openness category, which means I like a lot of change and I like new ideas and I like to constantly be learning. So because I'm such an outlier with that, it's going to be difficult for me to find people to support me when I'm making decisions that other people think that I have lost my ever loving mind. You know, when I left the FBI, when I've left the different careers that I have that have been really good careers, they're like, what is wrong with you? And now I understand their reaction because I'm so different than most people in that. And so there's comfort in that. And yeah, just what you said, it helps you to understand yourself in navigating those areas. And then the other area is business leaders. You know, if you're working in a
And
company,
And Crystal, can I pause you right there before
yeah,
we
yeah.
talk about the business? Because you triggered something in me, is that if we consider how the Neo helps us better understand ourselves and better understand the spectrum by which, most people operate, being able to visually see this is the spectrum and I'm somewhere way off the screen, somewhere over here, or somewhere in the middle, being able to see the areas where you fit in the spectrum. Um, when we went over my Neo, I actually felt a sense of relief in some of the areas where, as being somebody who is constantly changing and seeing how most of the people don't fall under the fast moving pace change category, being able to see that and visually go, oh, that explains why, this
Mhm.
may seem so strange to others, or why my parents didn't understand, or why everyone's advising me to do X, Y, and Z. And so I just wanted to touch upon that having experienced the Neo with you, not only did it help me get a better understanding of myself, but even the world around me and how I relate and connect to those around me without necessarily having to do their Neos, just by taking a
Mhm.
look at my own. So
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
made me think of that.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure, right? And with that, when we know, because it's 5 domains and 6 traits in each domain, so there's a lot that it covers, and then you combine them with each other. Now you can see those things and think, oh, this is where I thrive. This change, I thrive. People aren't going to understand it, and that's okay because I thrive with this, and it's gonna work out fine. But maybe I'm someone like for mine. I get quick to anger. Things annoy me quickly. Well, maybe I need to work on that. Or if I tend to get overwhelmed easy and panic, there are things that I can do to work on that. And it also measures your level of anxiety, your level of depression. So those are things that if you're okay with where you are with that in your life, that's fine. But if you see it as, oh, this is an area where I can work on, and shift it a little bit, you certainly can. One
Yeah.
of the areas that I worked on to shift mine was my straightforwardness. I used to tell you exactly what I thought. Straightforward. My mother used to tell me people don't always need to know everything that you're thinking. So I learned over the years is that I may get a better reaction or response that is going to be more beneficial if I shift my straightforwardness more down to the middle a little bit and massage my words more.
And so the Neo covers all of these different domains, these different areas of our lives, and give us insight into all these different areas. Can you tell us a tiny bit about the different domains?
Absolutely. So there's 5 domains, and under each domain are what we call 6 facets. So one is your emotional reactivity. So, you know, your anxiety levels, your ability to maintain calm under pressure, your reactivity to anger, and how self-conscious you are about yourself. Those are some examples of that. Your extroversion. So that's how you show up in the world. So, for instance, someone who's gregarious or someone who warmth would be that I'm pretty high on warmth. So I'm someone that can spark a conversation with a stranger and I'm truly interested in them. Like, where they came from, what are their interests. So that ability to really talk to people that you don't know. Excitement seeking, someone who's high on excitement seeking, may like to bungee jump or roller coasters, or they just like a lot of change. They see fear as excitement versus scary. Maybe they like scary
Mhm.
movies. Openness, that is someone who is a lot of artists are high on the openness because they love things that are pretty, their environment to be aesthetically pleasing. They like a lot of change. They like new ideas. They like learning just for the sake of learning. They don't necessarily have a need to know something. They just love learning it.
Mhm.
Agreeableness. So that's someone, that whole domain is you're working with other people. Do you tend to agree even when you don't necessarily agree? Where you add on that and your trust factor. Do you think that people are inherently good, or do you think people are not to be trusted? That most people have maybe a bad intention. Your altruism, your ability to, or your desire to really help people. Someone who's high on altruism probably volunteers a lot or donates a lot of money. Um, you're someone who maybe follows rules or questions the status quo. Your modesty would be, am I like tend to hide or not really talk about my achievements, or am I very open and excited to share with people the things that I've done and I'm very proud of it? Conscientiousness, that is someone's confidence in their ability to do things well. It doesn't mean that you are good at something. It just means your belief that you are, or your belief that you can do something well. If you like things organized and set in their little place, um, how your achievement striving. So that is someone who, I have a goal. A lot of us have things that we want to do. And some of us, I'd like to do it if it's easy, or I'd like someone else to do it for me, or someone is like, if I set my mind to do something, I'm just going to do it. I don't care what it is. I'm going to, get down and get it done. Self-discipline. And then one is deliberation, which I think is really helpful. Was really helpful for me because I'm someone who makes snap decisions. And so I know that about myself. So I know for me, it's helpful for me to have those trusted advisors in my life that can slow me down and really think about the pros and cons. So that's just a very quick summary of all of the areas.
It was interesting for me as we went over my Neo, and I think I might have mentioned it felt like you were reading my palm, like you were this magician who was
Mm-hmm.
somehow telling me all of these truths about me, and it made me feel very seen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it I can't say that I intimately understand exactly how the Neo works, and yet having witnessed the accuracy and everything that you shared with me, there were a lot of moments that felt very familiar, that felt very obvious. Yes, that's totally me. And moments where I felt like, oh, that explains why I X, Y, and Z, and like, oh yeah, I can see that in myself. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's funny how I wouldn't have necessarily thought to ever look at these specific things about me or areas of my life as a means to better understand myself. And yet the way that the Neo puts it all together and the way that you interpret it and sort of explain it to me, it made me feel very seen.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Right. And what I also love about it is it takes the different domains and the facets in each domain and compares it up. Like when I was reading yours, I took things from your extroversion and things from your emotional reactivity and your openness and your agreeableness, and you're a good leader, or really you may not be necessarily a good team player, but a really good leader, because of the assertiveness and your organization and your calm under pressure and your the way you attack. problems and issues and just like to find solutions and all of that, just to me is like, oh yeah, this is someone who would be a good entrepreneur, a good business owner, or a good leader in some kind of a company or corporation. Because you take
Yeah.
all of these pieces together and take something from here and something from here and something from here and put the puzzle pieces together, which is pretty cool too.
Yeah, and actually that's something that I really enjoyed about the way that you work with the Neo, that it's not just, here's your report. It's looking at all the pieces that make up who I am, and with crazy accuracy being able to put it together in a way that really resonated with me. And the only way that I can, as a tarot lover, the way that I think of it is like a scientific reading.
Right.
Instead of cards, you're using the Neo and
Mhm.
interpreting how these different parts of me come together to make up who I am. And you were mentioning that the Neo is useful for individuals so they can better navigate their world, for families to help them find more harmony and union and connection. And then you were going to say, I think you started talking about entrepreneurs.
So business leaders. So if you're a supervisor and you need to hire people, or you're an entrepreneur, anyone who is working with a group of people and you're leading them, when you go to hire someone, there are, depending on the job, you have certain characteristics that you're looking for and certain characteristics that you probably don't want to have.
Mm,
Like for instance, if I can, take some of what I learned from you from your Neo, if I was a business owner and it was a small business, I know that if I hired you, you would knock it out of the water and do a really good job until you got bored and then you would leave. Now, if I had a big company with a lot of room for you to grow, and I wanted to cultivate you as a leader of a team and have different places for you to grow, you would be a fabulous candidate for that position. Um,
mm,
if I'm say I'm a dentist and I have someone working in my front office, I want someone who is going to score high on extroversion, on the warmth. Like I want when someone comes into my office to be greeted by someone that authentically cares about them. Like, hi, how are you? Maybe remembers them by name, remember something that they learned about them at the last visit, because that helps that person to feel important.
mm.
If I have an IT business, I don't necessarily want someone in their cubicle talking to each other. Like, do your IT stuff. You don't need to be chit chatting with everybody. So it depends on what your business is. You may want a particular person, or you may want someone who's going to work well as a team member. And so, depending on the personality of your team, you're going to want them to come in. And you can't get this information from a job interview or from a resume.
Right. So I'm really seeing how, as an employer, having the Neo and having using it as a screening tool before you hire someone can be priceless and so beneficial. Um, when you hire someone because you read their resume, you had an interview, you might get a sense, a vibe about them. But having the Neo really explain to you so much, in so much depth, how this person operates can
Mm-hmm.
potentially save you so much heartache, so much money. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of I'm gonna confession time. I'm thinking of myself and previous jobs in which I got the job and they trained me to do all of these things. So they invested in me to learn all of these different skills with the intention of having me be, part of the company long term. And I did the trainings, I learned the things, I did my job well. And yeah, as soon as I felt like I kind of mastered it, I got bored and I would leave. And so
Mm-hmm.
um, I often say that, quitting my regular job and starting my own business was the best decision I could have ever made. And I have no intention of looking back. That makes sense given my Neo. And at the same time, I can see how I could have, or the companies that hired me and trained me could have saved a lot of money and time had they known this about me, had I known this about me and hired somebody who did see themselves in the company long term. And so
Right.
I'm seeing how employers could really save so much, and it's so hard to terminate someone
Mhm.
depending on the job. I'm seeing how employers can benefit from getting to know their people, really getting to know them before officially hiring them. Is that kind of how you were intending to support employers in using the NEO?
Absolutely. You know, someone who had a team of my own that I didn't get to choose, if I would have given them the Neo, I probably would have hired 40% of them.
Mm,
Not because they were bad people or because they were bad at their job. They just weren't a good fit for what I needed.
right.
Um, and having a conversation with a really good friend of mine that has an audiology business um, throughout many states talks about hiring someone that's just not a good fit
Mm,
and how expensive it is. You know, again, it doesn't mean that the person is good or bad. It's just that those particular traits just didn't mesh with that particular job.
mm,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, so for sure.
As somebody who just got a taste of your magic and seeing you in action and working with a Neo, I was really surprised and excited and curious and even relieved at having a deeper understanding about all these different facets of myself. I'm excited to see you continue to do more of these with your clients.
Absolutely. And then I was going to ask you this because we
Mhm,
did this. You've been my coach for a while, and I gave you my Neo.
mhm.
And if you think back to when we first started, if you would have had as my coach my Neo from the very beginning, how could that
Yeah.
have helped you, right? Because you learn certain things about me. It's like, oh boy, when she makes it, I tend to make decisions really fast, and you had to learn like, whoa, 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 slow it down, and different aspects about me that you had to learn along the way to support me. That I think if we would have had that from the very beginning, it would have saved a lot of time as well.
Yeah, it's as a coach, I can see this tool being so helpful and working with you as a coach for better understanding my clients, better understanding how they think, how they operate, how I can really support them in where they are right now. So I mean, I feel like we've gotten to know each other really well and naturally work really well together. But now we know we work well together because we happen to have so much in common according to our Neo. But starting a new relationship with a client, especially a coaching client, and doing the Neo upfront as part of the onboarding process and getting to know them in this way certainly expedites that understanding and that getting to know each other and seeing what makes them tick, like you said earlier, what pushes their buttons, what really lights them up. With that understanding, I would probably have advised you differently in certain areas. So instead of encouraging you to do a bunch of videos, suggesting that you do a podcast instead, because we know that conversation is more of your sweet spot, more of your sweet zone. So as a coach, I would highly recommend first doing these Neo assessments at the beginning of your whatever your coaching program is, so that you're better to you're more in line and aligned with what the client how the client works, how they think, and being able
Mhm.
to support them. So I'm curious for those that have done other personality assessments, or for example, people who love human design. How does this compare? How is it different? How is it similar to the two
Great
work?
question. Yeah, it's a great question, and they're so different. That I can't really compare because they're based on different things. And I don't know a lot about the intricacies of human design. What did you know? It's based on, the date and time and place of your birth. And then from there, it, has a whole other thing about it. This is based on your answers to 250 questions over a period of time. So it can change. And you have the ability to change things on your Neo. If there's something that, like maybe the depression or the anxiety, you want to work on that, you can go to counseling and work on that. Or the straightforwardness, I can learn ways to communicate differently. So you can change that. It's movable. And what I love personality tests. I love all that stuff. I love the horoscope. I love reading about my Aries stuff, and the magic that like Darla DeLu has, and Denise Dufil Thomas with her money mindset. I love taking all those tests, and it really, I believe, makes a nice compliment. It's like that, having that nice wine with a really good Italian dinner. It just goes really well together. It's like the more you know about yourself, the more you know. And you can take those other pieces and combine it with what you learn about yourself with the Neo, and it can give you more power and just more knowledge.
I actually recently did this whole workshop where we learned a lot about human design. And specifically, I was given all this information about my human design. And now, having gone through the Neo with you, I do see a lot of overlap, or a lot of ways in which the Neo supports what I learned from about myself through the human design. However, there is a straightforwardness to the Neo that I really appreciate, whereas human design I feel is a little bit more complicated, or a lot more complicated. Um, Human design feels like it was written in the stars that this is how I am meant to be, whereas the Neo made me feel more empowered and
Mhm.
made me feel like, okay, I learned these things about myself. And so now that this has been brought to my awareness, I can do something about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can do something about it in a sense of, wow, I can leverage this. Like, I am someone that likes a lot of change and I love to learn, and I'm going to leverage that, and I am going to be an innovator for the rest of my life, like that. Or
Yeah.
it could be like, oh, I'm a little bit on the angry side. Maybe I need to reel that in and learn to manage, regulate my emotions. Now, I may still feel angry, but I might just need to regulate it a little bit more, learn skills. So absolutely. So you can take these traits that you have and massage them and change them where you want to.
Yeah.
And you may have a natural tendency always to one way or the other, but it's not written in the stars that you're always going to be this way if you don't want to be, or
There's
you
a
can't.
power in that
There's
that
a
I,
power in that, yeah. And an
yeah,
understanding too, like those ways that you just kind of naturally gravitate towards, like maybe this is just how I am, and now I understand it.
yeah.
Mhm.
I'm curious, for someone who is curious about the Neo, they're on the fence, maybe they've never heard about it, they're curious about working with you. Um, what advice may you give them in consideration of the Neo?
You can do some research online, send me an email. I would say just go for it and do it, because the more you know about yourself, the more you know. You know, there's nothing about taking the Neo that's going to harm you. But if you would like more information, or if you have questions that we haven't covered here, send me an email and I'm happy to address your questions.
And I know you recently wrote a blog post talking more about the Neo, so that might be a good resource as well for someone.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you for that. Yeah. So on my website there's a blog post.
Yeah, well, my goodness, thank you so much for this. I feel like I've learned so much. And like I said earlier, some of this feels really deeply familiar. And at the same time, having this level of awareness and this clarity around these parts that make me, it just, like I said earlier, it just makes me feel empowered to be able to leverage it, or adjust the parts that that
Right.
need some adjusting. And I'm thinking right now of how my Neo mentions that I am really good under high stress situations, which I feel that I am, and therefore get easily annoyed when people are not. And so now that I know, okay, most people are not as calm and collected under stress as I am. This is actually not the average. This is not the norm. This is the people who are sort of on this end of the spectrum. Now I know, okay, I can be more sensitive when those around me are in panic mode, and know that that's how they're designed. That's how they operate.
Isn't that so helpful to,
Yeah.
yeah, so helpful to know that. It's like, yeah, not everybody's as calm as I am. And I'm kind of an outlier. And
And
what a great area to be an outlier in.
yeah, and actually I kind of like referring to it as a superpower.
Mhm. Absolutely. It is a superpower. Yeah. Mhm.
So, thank you so much. I guess if anybody is curious to know more about the NEO or to work with you, then they can find you at your website, operationtransformation.net or operationtransformationbooks.com.
Yes.
And is there anything else you wanted to say?
I would just say that what I do with the Neo is before we ever go into it, is I want to know from you what you are looking for so that I can customize it for you. Because depending on what you're wanting to get out of it, will determine the information that I really want to pull for you. Because there's a lot of information. So I want to really take all of this information and customize it for you specifically. And I will give you a very pretty report that you will be emailed to you in a PDF form so that you always have it to read.
I love that. So, not only is the NEO useful for individuals, for families, for employers, for coaches who want to better understand their clients, but you can also have that initial consultation with them to help them zero in on what they want to have a greater understanding about so they can get even more out of the NEO.
Exactly. Exactly.
Beautiful.
Hmm.
Great.
Great. Well, thank you, Desleni.
Thank you. Until next time.
Okay. Bye.